Arlong happens to be one of the first major villains in the show who shows us what the rest of the show is going to look like. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the character of Arlong, his backstory, his importance in the show, and how he sets up a common motifs and themes for the rest of the villains to come. Let's get into it. First off, at large, One Piece has a lot of villains. It has a wide variety, from Doflamingo to Big Mom to Kaido to Arlong to so on and so on and so forth, right? So villains in the show are quite captivating because they typically have backstories. A good example of this would be Doflamingo. He grew up in Marijois as a world noble, but then his dad chose for him to leave Marijois, live with the commoners, and he had a bad experience there because he let commoners realize he was a world noble. Everybody hates the world nobles in the show because they enslave people. Good reason to hate them, right? And then the townspeople come, they beat up his family and stuff, his mom gets killed and all that, and his dark childhood, his background, then goes and drives Doflamingo to do what he does in Dressrosa and the rest of the show, committing these horrible acts against the people of Dressrosa, and just being a generally despicable guy. One Piece does a really, really good job of fleshing out their villains beforehand, so they aren't just these lifeless souls who go around doing bad things for the sake of it. That's one of the things that makes One Piece villains so incredible. Another thing that all One Piece villains typically have is elements of their character or their backstories that you can empathize with. A good example of this is Big Mom. Her parents orphaned her at a young age, and she was just left on the island of Elbaf all alone as a kid. That is something people can empathize with. They understand that is a rough experience. You don't get over that in a day or a year or a lifetime. Those kind of things dramatically change the trajectory of one's life, typically for the worse, in the show at least. And because of that, she goes and becomes a villain later on in Whole Cake Arc, and I would assume Wano. Again, I've yet to watch that. Oops, my bad. Now, these backstories and these elements of empathy that you can have for the characters, for the villains, I should say, go and make them really appealing to the audience and help us to come and not just hate the villains, but actually like the villains. And a good element, a good part of, I would say, every good villain is that you should be able to like the villain, or at least understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? They have to be multi-dimensional instead of two-dimensional, just, ooh, I'm evil because I can be evil. So, the first One Piece villain that really gets these two aspects down with the backstory and the elements that you can empathize with is Arlong. First off, let's dive into his past. Arlong was part of the Sun Pirates, which was an all-fishmen crew created by Fisher Tiger, who was a former slave to the world nobles. This crew was made to sail the seas and go and just be these sort of good guy pirates, right? As good guys as pirates can be. And the crew in general disliked humans, but there was some split among the crew between Jinbei and Arlong and so on and so forth, right? Eventually, Fisher Tiger dies after being ambushed by some Marines, and the reason why he dies, though, is because he refuses to get a blood transplant because the only blood they had around was human blood. And it was forbidden for fishmen and humans to share blood due to the whole, we're humans, you're fishmen, like racist stereotypes and archetypes and all that going on in the show. So this fills Arlong with a hatred of human beings, which is a good motivation, right? For him to go and want to conquer the East Blue, enslave all the humans, and it's good motivation for him to go and do the evil things he does to Nami. But Arlong has, albeit not the best, because he's among the first villains that Oda tries to implement this with, but he does have some empathizable, air quotes, element. He loves his people, the fishmen, and he genuinely wants a better life for them. He wants fishmen to be on top, and he wants to look out for those who are like him. Is it evil? Absolutely. But everybody can sort of empathize with that. You want to look out for your family and friends and those closest to you. You want them to be on top and have good opportunities in life so that they can do the things that make them happy and fulfilled, right? So Arlong has some humanity, per se, to him, which lets the audience go connect with the villain a little bit, not as much as later villains do. They really build upon this. But it gives us this general sense of what the villains of the rest of the show are going to look like. Now, let's look at Arlong just specifically as a villain in the story. He has this stereotypical take over the world plan, with his goal being to eventually conquer the East Blue by utilizing Nami's amazing skills at map making. Now, one great thing about Arlong in the story is he's the first villain that's good at being bad. He is truly, truly despicable and knows how to be evil and execute his plans in a way to where they could come true. He is the strongest pirate in all of the East Blue. Probably because he came from the Grand Line, but still, doesn't matter. He's the strongest pirate in the East Blue until Luffy shows up. He utilizes the fact that fishmen have superior strength to the average human, and he has a crew of fishmen, to go and conquer Nami's village of Kokoyashi. He enslaves the entire village, makes them all pay taxes, and he takes Nami onto his crew as his personal map maker after killing her mother, because he sees a map that she made and thought, oh, she could be useful to us. We're fishermen. We need to know where all the currents are and where all the islands are and everything. Map as much as we can so that we can take over the East Blue, right? Rise up against all the humans and all that. So he's truly good at being bad. He is a threat in the show. And when we get to the Arlong Park arc, the stakes are really high. Luffy could lose Nami forever to Arlong and his crew. She could die, possibly, or she could just be lost to the crew and he would lose one of his first 2 crew members. That's a big deal. And additionally, as previously mentioned, Arlong is a pirate from the Grand Line. And he has a 20 million berry bounty. Now at this point in the show, that's a whole lot of berries. There's nobody with a higher bounty that you're going to be finding around the East Blue. Arlong is a serious threat, and when you first meet him and he fights Luffy, you think, oh, can Luffy beat this guy? This guy's crazy strong. My goodness. According to the wiki, he's about 8'8", so he just towers over the crew. He has this giant, foreboding presence, right? And if you look at his personality, he's brash, he's psychotic, he's aggressive, he's dominant and forceful. He's just this beast of a fishman who is not to be trifled with. Another good thing that is done with Arlong as a villain, from a story standpoint and a character building standpoint, is that he's a really good antithesis to Luffy. Luffy's own personality is energetic, optimistic, he's good, he has goodwill towards others, he's a good guy. Whereas Arlong is the exact opposite. He's a bad dude. As previously mentioned, he's psychotic. He does things that only a psychopath would do. What he does to Nami is completely unforgivable. It's insane, right? And the two really butt heads in a way that creates a lot of conflict and tension in the show, which makes the walk to Arlong Park and then the actual battle between Luffy and Arlong all the better to watch. Talking about the battle between Luffy and Arlong, you have to look at their fighting styles. Luffy, he gets creative when he's fighting, but he never really fights dirty. Whereas Arlong, my goodness, he throws Luffy into the water, where the fishermen are clearly at an advantage, and he knows he has a devil fruit, so goodness, that's not going to work out well for him. And he tries to stab him with his nose and everything. Arlong just fights dirty. He does whatever he can to win. He is ruthless. He has no respect for his opponent at all. The man is crazy. Whereas Luffy, he holds back a little bit more. He tends to have a little bit more respect in the sense of he doesn't just want to kill you the moment he gets into a fight, right? He respects other people's lives, and he tries to understand them typically before he goes to fight them. Now, all of this, Arlong being built up as a villain and then him getting really, really evil And even though we see the backstory way later in Fishman Island, it does still affect how you think of Arlong, especially if you're rewatching the show after seeing his backstory. So at the end of Luffy's fight, there's this awesome moment where Luffy just destroys Arlong Park, a really great moment in the show, by just stomping it and decimating Arlong. The man is destroyed, right? He cannot get up. The Marines got him. He's gone. It's over. And the nice thing about it is because Arlong was built up to be such a bad guy in the arc, there's no lost love. It's just a nice, easy, happy ending to Nami's tragic life living under Arlong and the Arlong pirates. So in conclusion, Arlong really foreshadowed a lot of the brilliance in future One Piece villain crafting. Oda goes and uses a lot of the elements of Arlong to make better villains in the future, right? And almost always he will make a better villain the next time he makes a villain than the previous villain he makes. He likes to improve upon his villains. You can look at this from Arlong to Crocodile, and then Crocodile to Lucci, and then Lucci to, gosh, tons of guys in Marineford. There's a lot of villains there. And then Marineford guys to Skip Fishman, Doflamingo, and then Doflamingo to Big Mom, although there is an argument to be made that Doflamingo is just the peak villain in One Piece. And then Big Mom to, I would assume, Kaido. Again, I've yet to watch Wano. I'm sorry. Right? So Arlong really helps with a lot of future villain crafting in One Piece. Additionally, his backstory is revealed during the Fishman arc, which elevates him from being a good, solid early villain to just one of the better villains in One Piece. He gets fully fleshed out during that arc, and he feels like a much more well-rounded character. Out of all the East Blue, Arlong was by far and away the most menacing threat to the Straw Hats. And because of this, he really elevated the stakes of the East Blue and foreshadowed a lot of what would go on in the Grand Line. Arlong really helped to set a tone and pace for the show, and he was a phenomenal addition to the East Blue saga. Hey, if you guys have enjoyed watching this video, make sure to check out another video. You can check out the first video made by my good friend Noah, who's working on the channel with me. That video is about what if Vivi was in the East Blue. Could she survive? Would she die? Who knows? And if you enjoyed this video, you can also just subscribe. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.